Hi everyone, welcome back to Miss Krumholtz's art class. So today we're going to focus on color. And I have these printed out images that you can choose from. So there's 2 and then there's 4. And then I do have another handout that you can pick from. So you'll have a choice of 6 different images to redraw. And you're going to use a piece of 8.5 by 11 plain white paper. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a nice 1-inch border just to give it that sense of professionalism. The border always kind of dresses up the artwork nicely. So depending on the picture that you're going to choose, so if you would choose the cupcake, you would want to hold your image portrait. If you are doing the rose or the bird, you may want to hold your landscape, paper landscape. I'm going to choose the cheesecake today. So if you really look on my handout, you know, you have what seems like obviously just red and then, you know, sort of a yellow. You would think just red and yellow. However, there's a lot more layering that goes into adding a color copy or a color version of something. So step 1 is going to be, you guessed it, sketching out your basic outline, right? We can't do anything without looking at what we're drawing and, you know, getting those details down first. So I have my paper above you. You can't really see it as much. I'm going to start out with a really, really light outline. And I always say really light outline because you want to make sure that if you have to erase, that you're not going to drive yourself crazy trying to get rid of, you know, all your mistakes. So I started with a basic outline there. If you're looking at this, you know, you really want to pay attention to our proportions. As I always mention, you know, the sizes of one thing compared to another. So I'm looking at the height versus the width. It's obviously a little wider than it is high. So I kind of just very, very quickly draft this out. And then I can go in. I don't want to make my pencil lines too dark. I can go in after my outline and I can add my details. And I'm just going from one part of the object to another, kind of like stepping stones to get you over a river. You want to start with one rock and then kind of move to the next. So I always start at the top, just kind of where my eye goes, and then I work my way down the page to the rest of the details. And I'm, you know, looking at the sizes and the shapes. Try to get it as perfect as you can. I mean, it's not going to be exact, but if it's relatively similar, we'll be the only ones that notice. When you look at areas that have these highlights in there, you want to draw those in as well, because that's really going to be the spot where you're going to be adding, you know, your different colors. When we go to color this, those are going to be a lighter tone. And then also areas that I know are going to be darker, I'm just going to make a shape for where they're darker. This way it's kind of like a paint by number. You guys can go in and sort of figure out which areas you need to be really light and which need to be dark. And here are my highlights. Okay. So once we have our basic drawing, we'll be ready to move into color. When we go to use colored pencils, really you can use any brand. So I have many different brands. This is an Amazon Basics. It has, you know, you can use a regular Crayola set that maybe has a few different colors, or you can, you know, if you have fancy pencils, I have all different kinds. You know, some have more colors than others. Again, we are going to be mixing colors, so it really doesn't matter. You're never going to just use one color. part of achieving these realistic tones is layering those colors. So I'm going to go through each section just so you have kind of a better idea. So I'm going to start with the cherries. I'll do one small section up top. So obviously we're looking at red. And then what do we use to make it darker? Well, I have options for you. I always tell my students you could use black. I'll show you what black looks like to layer in those areas that are darker, and purple. My personal favorite, I'm going to choose the darker purple, is using purple. I just think it looks brighter, a little less dull. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the paper so you can really kind of see the part that I'm going to be copying. I'm going to go for this top cherry here. So the first thing I want to do, you know what, this red looks sort of pink. I'm going to get a true red. This is a true red. You always want to make sure that your pencils are sharp. Okay, so I'm just going to sharpen this a little bit more. And I start around my edges. And there's a highlight here, so I'm going to leave that for right now. And I'm pressing relatively hard because I want my color to be really saturated. And you'll notice that with the more pressure that you apply, the brighter your tones will get. So I'm pressing pretty hard. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to add very lightly. I'm going to add my purple. And if you notice, once I'm layering this on here, the purple will really start to make it darker. However, the color doesn't look so dull. It still is like a really rich tone. I also have this little dark area here. I believe this is part of the cherries. You may need to go back over with the red. And if you notice the part of the pencil lines show, what I like to do, you can always go in and you can just erase out some of those pencil lines, and you can also erase out the color. It does come off if you needed. So I have sort of a bright tone there. If I want to go even darker, then I can kind of use my black. To sort of go in there. So if you notice, I'm layering. This is not something that happens really, really fast. It's something that it's a process that you have to achieve with patience. Okay, so if you look, you know, my cherry will start to come to life. If you find that the colors bleed out, you can just erase them. Okay, so I have my top part done. If you find that you need, you know, to make this a little darker, if you see pink in an area that, you know, I mean, obviously this isn't pink, this is a highlight. But if you notice that there's areas of a color, you're gonna draw in whatever colors that you see. If I go to do my cake area, my cake, yeah, it looks sort of like, I'm gonna use a little gold. I'm gonna use a little bit of like an earth tone, skin tone. White is a really good color for blending. And I'm gonna use a little brown in here. So I'm gonna use kind of these three colors to get that cake. Now I'm gonna start in this corner over here. I noticed that it's darker on the left side and then lighter on the top there. So for that top area, I'm going to basically kind of keep it white. And I'm also gonna get rid of some of my pencil lines there. So I'm gonna leave that white and I'm just gonna sort of go where it starts in here. And I'm gonna go relatively lightly. Now this white will show because the other side of it is red. So when we add our red over here, from the cherry dripping, you're still gonna see the edge of that. And then I'm gonna go in, and if you look, it sort of has this like kind of little patterns. And they're at random. It's just areas of dark and light. And what do I do if I mess up? I'll just go in and lighten it with my eraser. Colored pencil does erase. It's not the easiest to erase, so I always recommend starting off lightly. But really, it's just a layering process. Okay, and I can achieve that spongy cake look. Okay, if I see a little bit of purple in there, let's say, you know what, I really want to make this, I see a little bit of like a purple in some of here. You can just go ever so lightly. This is a process for you to achieve those tones. And you're holding your pencil on its side, as always, and you're layering, and you're really, really taking your time. So you can pick any one of my colored images that I have listed for you, and you're gonna make that 1-inch border. You'll draw the outline for whichever image you pick with as much detail as possible. The more details you add initially in the beginning, the easier the drawing is. And then you will check those proportions, those size relationships of each part to the other. And then you will start in one section and begin to add that color slowly. And remember to constantly work. If you noticed when I was working, you can fold the paper, you can do whatever you need to. I was working really closely alongside so that I was really trying to get all those different values. So it's really, really important that you do that as you're working. Good luck, guys, and have fun.